Hi everybody, welcome to my latest video. As you can see, it's quite miserable out here and the power has just gone off in my house, which means I have no lights. So the video doesn't end quite the way I was hoping, but I get so much stuff done. I start the video with a little flurry of moving the wood, finally. It was behind my car and just kept me trapped, so I had to finish that off. And then I get into working on the carpentry and the taps. And I kind of meander my way through this video a little bit. There's some ideas that I have that don't end up working out, but rather than deleting that, I thought I would leave it in just to show you the process, to show you kind of how I work through things, puzzle through things, come up with ideas, and change on the fly. So a lot gets done in the sink area, and I almost get the taps in, but then the lights go out on me. So it's a fun video with a lot of different things. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you again at the end. Okay, job done. Not a bad effort before breakfast, if you ask me. I think it took about 2.5 hours. And I basically decided that life is too short for stacking wood, especially when I know this is only going to last about 5 or 6 weeks. I thought it would last a lot longer, and so this time around, I've gone for the messy method. So I'm meeting friends for coffee in a couple of hours, and I've decided to dedicate today to catching up on a bunch of computer work, even though it is beautiful and sunny outside. But I thought maybe I could try to make a few decisions about the kitchen sink because I'm going to need to have a list of things to buy for when I go into town in a couple of days. And the first thing I need to decide, I think, is how I want to clad the front part of the sink. And that's going to involve deciding between 2 pieces of wood. So if I can get that done this morning, I'll be pretty happy. And then I've got a lot of other decisions to make, but I'll get back to all that stuff, I think, tomorrow. So this is definitely just an idea at the moment. I don't know if it's going to work. Oh, hello, little babies. I need to give these guys a drink. I repotted them yesterday. And yeah, they're looking quite happy here in the polytunnel. So the decision will be between this size of wood on the front, which I think I'm leaning towards, and this smaller size. The advantage of the smaller one is maybe I won't have to adjust the wood so much to go around the corners. I mean the curves. I don't actually know, so I'm going to cut a few pieces to the right size, fit them together, and see what I think. Another thing I have to figure out is how I want to prop the tap up to raise it above the level of the sink, and I'm thinking I'll get a nice chunky bit of wood. I'll probably take the bark off. I think I definitely will, actually, and somehow make a hole in it for the taps to go. I don't know, and I'd actually prefer to use olive instead of oak, but the oak is dry, and the olive will be coming directly off of a tree, and it'll be a lot more likely to crack. So, first order of the day, let's get set up and chop these pieces to size and see what they look like. So I'm going to cut these a little longer than needed because I do love to procrastinate a decision, and I have a feeling I'm going to cut everything a bit shorter. But if I cut them long at the moment, I can make that choice later on. So I guess I'll cut a couple of the bigger pieces and a couple of the smaller pieces and see how it looks. But these pieces, they're quite expensive in the shop, and I've only seen them at one of the large local hardware stores called Bricomarche. I don't know where else to get them, and they always seem to be out of stock. So this might be a horrible idea trying to use them when I can't actually resupply them, but there's other Bricomarches and other places, so if I have to go somewhere else to get more, I will. But for the moment, I'm just trying to make some choices to see what looks best. All right, let's go see what it looks like. Okay, these pieces are meant to go side by side and snake around the curves. Another thing I want to get to today is give everything a clean off and maybe a few more stains before I actually start getting to work on things. But for the moment, I have to decide between these two types of wood. So I thought the trickiest part would be not having gaps when I place this on the curves. So there will be a gap if I get everything flat there, but I feel like if I router the back off of the pieces, it'll close the gap, and it actually doesn't seem really that bad. So I don't know, maybe the thicker, larger pieces are better. It's going to take a lot less chopping, but these ones are going to be a little bit more easy to configure around the curves and less likely to have gaps that I'll have to deal with. So actually I don't really know. I really don't know. These ones aren't quite as nice looking as the other ones, but they're also a lot cheaper. But I'll need more of them, so there's lots of things to consider when you're doing stuff like this, and I just don't know which one is best. Kind of like the look of the small ones, better than the look of the big ones. But it really is kind of hard to decide, if I'm honest with you. I wonder if I need to maybe cut a few more and lay them out side by side, hang them from some temporary nails. But surprisingly, I think I am leaning more towards the small ones. Anyway, I'm going to consider this. That's the issue. The curvy problem that I thought I would have isn't quite as pronounced as I thought it might be. So that's something to consider, I suppose. And yeah, I guess right now I'm going to give this thing a couple coats of linseed oil and then move on to possibly finding a branch for the tap from an olive tree. One thing I always find quite interesting with the more artistic projects like this is how much I can agonize over every small little decision and then completely forget that I ever gave it much thought at all. It always feels like even if I spend days, maybe even months, thinking about a certain thing, by the time I actually do decide, I've completely forgotten that it was a decision in the first place. So I'm sure with these pieces of wood, it'll be something similar where I spend a lot of time thinking about it, and then once I actually make a choice, I'm on to the next thing, because there's definitely a lot of decisions to be made when you're working on your house, big and small, and when you start introducing an element of attempted artistry into the mix, things also get a lot more, I don't know, confusing and difficult to decide. So I feel like even though this isn't really changing the color very much, I'd like to get at least maybe 3 or 4 more coats on of this linseed oil turpentine mix to protect the wood as much as possible. I think there's also a possibility for using, I don't know if it's a resin or what it is, but it kind of puts a very thin plastic-ish coat over the wood. And while I don't really like to do that because I want the wood to breathe, I wonder if in areas where there's water, like my windowsill in the kitchen and also obviously a bathroom counter, I'm wondering if that could be a smart place to use something like that. So if you're using it sparingly for good reason, I don't mind using products that aren't quite as natural as I would like. So another thing to think of, another decision to make. I don't know very much about using non-natural products like that. So I don't know if by putting the linseed oil over the wood already, that's kind of going to make it not stick or anything like that. But yeah, I'd be open to know if anyone's ever used a product like that and what your recommendation might be. Another good idea actually could be to stain the 2 different types of wood to see how they turn out, because maybe they're going to show up differently. And they haven't been sanded yet. I would like to sand them first, but these are testers, so perhaps, actually, you know what? Perhaps I'm going to sand them up, stain them up, see what they look like, and maybe there's a big difference between the 2 woods that makes me decide to choose one over the other. So I'll get to that in a little bit. Right now, I've got a bit more staining to do, and then I'll probably head out for coffee with my friends and get to some computer work for the rest of the day. So besides computer work and general life admin stuff, I also want to make some decisions, final decisions on my crack shack, formerly the tool shed, because Cesar the wood guy has responded to me and said he can deliver in the first week of January, around the 6th or the 7th. And so before I confirm my order and make it all final, I just want to think a little bit more about my design and do one final drawing. So that's another thing on my list today. So this is where I'm at right now, and maybe you'll see me a little later today. I might get these things sanded and stained as well, possibly on camera, possibly off camera. Who knows? But right now I'm just trying to get this done before I head out to see some friends. So, see you soon. So I'm back. I actually found a little bit of time before coffee to do some sanding. So I got on with that, met my friends for coffee, and then I've been out here linseed oiling, getting these to figure out what the final color will be for each type of wood. As it turns out, it looks like both types of wood are pretty similar in color. So I'm going to let these dry overnight, and tomorrow I'm going to nail them on to the underneath of the sink, to the underside, and see what they both look like. But in the meantime, it's a lovely evening, and I would really enjoy being outside tonight, doing some other things, maybe going for a walk. But I've got a bunch of computer stuff to do today, so I'll get on with that, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a full day of work on the sink, which is going to include loads of varied jobs, and I'm really looking forward to it. How about you, Larry? Are you looking forward to a little bit of work on the sink tomorrow? Yes, I thought so. So, good night from a stunning evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. What a beautiful morning. It's only about 9 a.m. I'm up early and determined to get this sink and tap, at least the drill holes, done before the end of the day. The wood turned out really nice. On further inspection, I think it's actually the same type of wood. It just looked a little different before it was stained, but I think it's going to be a tough call, but I'll get those into place a little later and make a decision. But first, it's time to go hunting. I'm on the lookout for some nice olive wood that's gonna be chopped directly off the tree. I've got lots of gnarly branches, I've got some dead stuff, and what I'm looking for is a piece of wood that's gonna hold the tap above the level of the sink, and I'd like to make a sort of feature of it. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do it yet, so I don't know what I'm looking for specifically. I'm just hoping that when I see it, I'll know it. I'm also looking for a piece of wood that's a little bit more narrow and a bit more gnarly to use for Sinead's door handle. I'd like to make one for her on the inside and one on the outside, and possibly something like that could work, where it's kind of curved and I can attach either end and you've got space to hold on to it, so that could be a contender. Maybe something like that. It's a bit bigger, but it's got kind of the curve there. There's another part above that could work. Hi, little guy. You been down at Sinead's? Hanging out? Good morning. You have fun adventures? You're all wet. He's been up to no good. So I'm gonna get the ladder, get some handles off the tree, and have a scope around to see if I can find something suitable for the taps. What have you been up to, Larry? Just hanging around? It's a gorgeous day. It is a shame to be stuck in the house, but I'm really excited to finally get this bathroom sink and tap installed. And it's a gorgeous morning, and I should be out here for a little while. So, where were we? I think that branch is my first target. Timber! So this is definitely a job for another day, the making of the handles. But I figured that since I'm out here, I might as well grab a branch and start to think about it, because it could be a fun sort of whittling project. I'm gonna get the carving knife out, the spoon carving knife, and peel away the bark and try to make something really nice for Sinead's door. But the main goal is trying to figure out what to do with this tap, and I really don't know how to do it. I'm hoping this tree right here speaks to me. And I've chosen this tree because it's coming out. As you can possibly see, there's lots of dead branches on it, but mostly I want to take it out because it's super close to this tree. It makes both of them really hard to pick, and it's also very close to this, I guess what was once some kind of a water basin. And I'd like to just clear this space out a little bit more, open it up. Plus, I need something to hold my tap up, so I don't know, maybe there's a branch on this tree that I can figure out how to use. The problem is that it needs to be a certain thickness to be able to drill through and get the taps through. Or I might just use a part of the wood, like half of it, and carve it out from the back. I don't really know, but I feel like if I take off something like this, there's plenty of options in here for me to make a decision. And then another day I'll come back and remove the entire tree and possibly use the thicker branches as maybe some sort of structural supports, or maybe something sort of artsy. I don't know yet. I'm definitely not going to use it for firewood, even though olive is actually really, really excellent firewood. It just seems like a shame because the trees, I think, are super beautiful. So that cut would have been a lot easier with the chainsaw, but if you watched my last video, you know it's broken. However, a couple people suggested that perhaps I have the chain on too tight, so I'm going to investigate that later on, and hopefully that fixes it, because I would like to tidy up the cut a little bit, and it's just useful to have a chainsaw, even though I now have a firewood supply cut to the right size. So I've got a whole lot of olive branch here. I think I'm going to find something good. There's another potential handle there. I'll probably chop these off, the long spindly bits, and save them for next year for kindling. And I'm pretty sure in this thicker piece here, I'll be able to find something that I can use for some kind of creative solution for raising the tap up above the level of the sink. So right now it's time for breakfast and a coffee, and I'll see you soon for more work on the sink. Hello again from the sink. The top is looking nice and shiny, first of all because I've got a light on it. Secondly because I've put loads of coats of linseed oil on, and I'll probably do a few more before I finish this thing up. What I really want to look at right now is which do I like better, the large pieces of wood or the smaller pieces of wood. I feel like I'm still leaning towards the smaller pieces, which is kind of a surprise. I was expecting to want to use these, but I don't know. I like the small ones. It might be more finicky to work with because it doesn't give me as much leeway. It's not very thick. Or maybe I can find something that's partway in between both of them. I'm not going to be able to get these on in this video because I need to go buy some of the tiny nails. They have been lost somewhere between the shuffle up and down to Sinead's place, but this is what it looks like. If you have any feedback or thoughts, let me know. Obviously, it's not going to be screwed in at the top. It'll be very small nails that you won't really see, but this is just for testing purposes. Another thing to point out is the trim. So I've got this stuff here, and the idea is that I'll put some trim on so that water doesn't want to sneak through underneath the back board there. I'll glue it on and nail it on, but I feel like this piece is just a little bit too big. There's a smaller one that exists in the shop, but it's a dark color, and I don't like the color, so I don't know. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll just wait until the next video to decide on this one as well. What I need to figure out now, though, is the taps. I can't figure out the placement of the sink on the counter until I figure out how these things are actually going to go together with the wood that I put on. And I don't really know what I'm doing with the wood until I find the perfect piece. I'm a bit mystified by this whole thing, so I've got some thinking to do, starting with reading the instructions. So I'm gonna plop myself down by the fire on the couch next to this guy who's looking super cozy. It's no wonder because we've got the fire roaring. It's really lovely in here, despite being quite cold outside. And lucky for me, I get to sit down and try to figure some stuff out. So this is my next task. How does this all attach? And once I work this out, maybe it'll help me decide on a piece of wood. Okay, what do you think, Larry? Comments, tips, suggestions, any advice for me? Okay, you can just sit by the fire, relax, and be snuggly. So the part that's kind of confusing to me is, what the heck is this extra plastic bit here for? This part goes on to the bottom of the taps. These go through here, I believe. Hopefully. Maybe one at a time. So they go through like that. And then you have this weird plastic bit on here, which I don't really know what it's for. Perhaps I could just keep it as is and use this on the counter to raise everything up. But then I'm wondering what this sort of silver lip is for. It seems like this part should go under the counter and this should go on top. But it all just seems weird to me. So this part unscrews. I think what I'll end up doing is getting rid of this weird plastic piece. Eventually, this is a very, very long thread. Okay, maybe it's not supposed to come apart. This is pretty serious stuff. What are you doing? What's happening here? Okay, it keeps going. I actually don't really know what is going on, so I probably will just read the manual reluctantly. But I think my idea is to screw this piece on, get rid of this thing, and get this into the wood so it's kind of sitting in the wood. Maybe I need to make a hole that will eventually, that will be the right size that allows this whole thing to screw in. I don't really know. It definitely does seem like some serious overkill though. Like this doesn't really need to be this long for what I'm going to want to do with it. So maybe I end up grinding it off. I really don't know. So I think I'll just follow my initial advice and actually read the manual and come back at you when I have a more fully formed plan. So I read the instruction manual and it was mostly useless, but I think I have an idea. And once I clean up the olive branch, I think I'll know if I have a piece of wood suitable. I'm going to come back to this in a minute and see if I can get the chainsaw to work after I loosen the chain. So, got a few little outside tasks to do, which is fine because though it is chilly out here, it still is incredibly beautiful. So I'm going to see if I can tidy this thing up. I probably should have done this down on the bottom terrace to prevent me from having to take all the scraps back down, but here it is. I'll clean it all up. I'll see what I'm working with here, and hopefully an idea comes to me. I have a few things in mind that I'm going to try, but I won't know until I give this thing a trim. So that's looking pretty weird and wonderful. I bet you I can get something out of this. And then while I'm at it, I've also got the one that I brought up for handles, so let's give it a trim as well. So I see some possible handles in the future of this piece as well. And let me just say once again, how much I love the tool of joy. Alright, so I've got some tidying to do, but first, let's take a look at this chainsaw, because I might need it to chop this to size a bit more quickly than using the handsaw. So I'm hoping that it's an easy fix, and I can get it done just by loosening the chain. Alright, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. I don't need to take this whole thing off, I just need to loosen it so this thing can move back and forth. And generally you want the chain to be able to pull up. It does seem a bit tight, but not so tight that I think that's the problem, so let's give it a try anyway. It's a little looser, let's give it a go. If this works, I'll be very surprised because it doesn't seem like it was on that tight really. But if I don't try it, I won't know for sure, obviously. And it's good to eliminate everything before I take it into the tool fixer guy. It's a bit of a drive away to get to the tool repair people for Makita stuff. And we actually have a few things to take. So we might get them together and take a trip up to Gorda very soon. So let's give this a go. That seems good. Let's put it on the wood and see what it does. So my sawhorse is still down at Sinead's place, but I'm going to see if I can make this ridiculously huge piece of wood, which is the only piece that came in the load that won't fit into my burner, which is pretty good going. I'm going to see if I can just cut it on this thing and test the chainsaw out. Hopefully, loosening the chain has solved the problem. If it did, I'll be very happy and very surprised. So, fingers crossed. Nope, unfortunately, it did not. So if anybody out there has other ideas, I'm definitely open to hearing what they are. But Sinead and I, as I mentioned, need a trip to Gorda to the tool store anyway, so it looks like the chainsaw is coming for a ride. But now, I'm gonna investigate what I can do with this. And yeah, no idea how this is gonna turn out because this is a pretty cool piece of wood with lots of options. So I'm gonna make a coffee, sit down, and do some pondering. All right, folks, I've been inside for a little while. My coffee's gone. I've been staring at this tap. I've been looking at this little gizmo here. I've been hanging out with this thing here, trying to figure out a way to incorporate some section of this really cool piece of olive into the bathroom counter. But unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure how to accomplish it just yet. So what that means is I need to go into town. I'm going to take this gizmo from the tap and this other gizmo from the sink to see what fittings I need to get everything to work together. And come back with the things that I need to finally decide where the sink's actually going to be positioned and how I'm going to do the tap. So that's my plan right now, an unscheduled trip into town, and then I can push on with this project when I'm back. Hi everybody, I'm back from town, and these things are coming off because I feel like I found a size that's somewhere in between. I was just in at Bricomarsh and bought everything I need, I think, to be able to continue on with this job. So let's see if I can get this thing off one-handed so I can actually, oh, there we go, totally graceful, so that I can compare it with the one that I bought, and hopefully the one that I got is a little bigger because I feel like something in between is going to be perfect. So yeah, here we are. I've got 5 of these long pieces here, and they're just a little bit wider than the one that I've been using. So I'm just going to get on with preparing the pieces without filming, just power through, get everything ready that I might need tomorrow, sitting in front of the fire. And yeah, you'll see me again tomorrow when I have everything chopped to size, and I'll explain all of my ideas when I'm ready to get to work. So I'll see you then. So I've cut these pieces of wood. I spent quite a bit of time last night working on that. Everything is chaos in my house, as you can see. But it was quite fun to sit and, yeah, just chop the pieces I need in preparation for work today. And it was nice and relaxing. I was sitting by the fire, and eventually Larry moved in, and he snuggled up to the olive branch, which I'm not sure I'm going to end up using, but I'll find some use for it in the future. So right now, it's actually really beautiful outside, and I'm heading back out because I'm sort of procrastinating as usual, and I'm not exactly sure how to attach the tap on. After pondering things a little bit more, I think I'm leaning more towards using the oak once again because I think the olive is too thin and too gnarly, and drilling around an edge would be really difficult, and just the way the tap is designed, it's going to be too hard. And then I bought some things at Bricomarsh the other day that I was going to sort of use to form around the tap base to try to construct something myself. But I really just think drilling a hole through the oak is going to do just fine and probably look pretty cool. So I'm in doubt. I don't exactly know, but I guess I've explained this before. I often work a lot better once I kind of get going on things and see a vision. So I've got a piece of oak here, and I don't exactly know what to do yet. So when in doubt, sand. So taking the bark off with my axe and then sanding it probably would have been the way forward, but where's the fun in that? Although honestly, this is a 60 grit and I really thought it would take it off a lot more easily than it did. So all I'm trying to do now is just make a piece of oak that's not too tall. It just has to raise the top above the sink. So it's going to involve sanding it up a bit more and then drilling a hole through the top that goes all the way down to the bottom. So I have a bunch of work ahead of me. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to work or not. I guess the next step is maybe I'll drill it first and then cut it to size afterwards. You know what? I don't know. I'm going to ponder, and while I do, I have something I want to show you. So as you can see, the weather has been sunny and warm for the past few days after a little bit of rain about a week ago, and that means mushrooms. So I found this little guy as I was walking up my path. I'm pretty sure it's not something edible, but I am interested in mushrooms and I want to learn more. So this is the first time I've ever done what's called a spore print. And what you do is you put it on cardboard or white paper and you leave it overnight basically and see what color of spore print it makes. And then that helps you identify which type of mushroom it is. So you're using some other things as well, like you look at the gills, you touch things, see if they're fragile or sturdy. You look at the stem and the root, and the spore print is another way. So it's my first spore print. I think it's pretty cool, and I'll use all of this to possibly try to get an idea on the mushroom, but I don't think it's anything too interesting, but I am just quite curious. So I guess now it's time to chop and drill. Actually, ignore everything I just did and said. That other piece of wood is too thick for the space, which I probably should have checked a little bit more closely before I started working, but this is just the crazy creative process that I have. I know it's not to everyone's taste, but it's a glimpse inside the madness of how these things get done, at least from my brain. So I'm gonna start over again. I've got a more narrow bit of wood that I think is actually gonna work better, and we're gonna do it with the axe this time. So that was definitely the way to go. The axe was great. It's definitely in need of a sharpen, as with many of my tools, which is another 2006 goal, learn how to sharpen stuff. So I'm going to clean this up with the sander, and then it's time to drill. So, somewhat frustratingly, I don't actually have the right bit I need to drill into this thing, so I'll need to pick that up in town when I'm there later today. But I do know the rough size that I want for this wood, which is basically the height, around 13 centimeters or 12 centimeters. So I'm going to cut it off to 14. And then, excitingly, that's going to allow me to finally decide where I'm going to place the sink and where the top's going to go. So I'll mark all that stuff out once I get this cut done. Oh, I wish everything went that quickly. So these saws are great, just as a little aside. And I'll flatten everything off as needed later on, make it more precise. But for the moment, this gives me a nice working size to see how it's going to fit with the sink. Okay, so I've placed the sink more or less where I think it works best. I've been moving this thing around backwards and forwards loads, and this is what I've come up with. And then the idea is that this piece of wood, it'll be all nice and polished and sanded and lovely, and it's going to sit there quite a bit lower, but I've given myself some extra space. Then the top will go in this somehow and sort of hover over top like that, probably closer to sort of maybe that height there, maybe a little further in. One of my big concerns is having space to actually get behind the sink, just in case water gets in there, it needs to be mopped up, or just to clean. And same with this, I don't want it too far back in there because I don't want it to get stuff behind it and have it difficult to clean. I've also decided that I think I like this trim. It's the darker trim. I wasn't sure how it was going to work or look, but I think it's going to fit in well, and I think I can use this trim in other places to tie the color in as well, because I like to repeat things over and over again. I like to have the clay in lots of different places. The linseed oiled wood is in lots of places. I've got stone all over my property outside. The tiles have been repeated, and so I like to think of using things more than once. So if I end up using this trim here, it's quite likely it's going to start appearing in other places of the house as well. So the tap and the sink are going to get marked out, and then under here you'll notice some craziness, and this is to do with how I'm going to do the doors. I'm going to have sort of a double door operation opening up, and I need to also mark this out. So for the moment, it's just going to be me and the pencil, which isn't massively exciting, and then I'll need to head to town to get the proper bits. So this is where I'm at now, and I'll see you guys again soon when hopefully I'm ready to drill. Hi everybody from a brand new day. Happy New Year. The sink is all marked out, which I'll show you in a minute, but right now my focus is trying to get the taps in, and that means finishing off this piece of wood. So let's start with a bit of axing, just to try to make the bottom part a bit more narrow so it fits in more nicely. Okay, now I have to figure out the height, and I'm going to chop that off. So I've marked a line. I feel like somewhere around there could be just right, but I'll know for sure once I chop it off. And if it's not, I can cut it shorter. I don't think I want it to go any higher than this. Like that would be, I think, too high, but I think this is just about right. So sanding isn't going quite as well as I'd planned. It's pretty fuzzy. I'm not sure that this load of wood that I got is really fully seasoned yet. You can sort of feel the moisture in it, so it's kind of gumming up as I sand it. So it's going to take a little work, but let's do it the fast way. Okay, done. It's nice and smooth. I'm really happy with it. You can see how many sanding pads I ended up having to use, so it took quite a while. And I've also moved on to drilling. So as you can see, I've made a couple test holes using these fancy bits, and I wanted a really tight fit so that I can slide that in, and that's going to go on the top of the wood to hold the tap. One problem is this is way too long, so I'm going to have to saw this off, and then also it's not going to go all the way through this wood as you can see with this bit, but this is just to make a nice circle, and then I'll attack it from the bottom and try to make some holes with some other bits for the actual taps to snake through this piece of wood, and then the whole thing will be installed on the counter. So I'm a little nervous about drilling this because you don't want to mess up a nicely made piece of wood, but let's give it a try and hopefully it goes okay. So this is going to be a pretty tricky drill. In addition to lining it up in the middle, which should be pretty easy, I also need to make sure that it's quite vertical, because when this goes in, the tap will be screwing onto this, and if it's a little bit slanted either way, it's going to be very obvious once the tap is on. So this is going to be a pretty tricky maneuver. I don't really have a lot of experience with these bits, but it was actually quite a bit easier than I was expecting. So I'm nervous, but let's give it a try. Okay, here we go. I think that's okay. I might take a little bit more out, and then forget about chisels. I think I'll probably attack it with this and see if I can make the hole that way. Seems to be getting pretty smoky actually, so I don't know. Maybe that's good enough. It's about that deep, so this will be able to go until about there, and I think that's pretty good. Hopefully I don't have any problems cutting this. I'm not sure if it's a hacksaw job or maybe it needs the angle grinder, but we'll see. So it looks like this is going to take a while. I feel like I've turned this into quite the operation. So here's where we're at now, and I'll see you hopefully pretty soon with this thing completed and ready for the tap. Okay, this is how far I got using this drill bit, and now I think I'm going to try to finish things off more or less with the chisel. Let's see what this looks like on the other side. Yeah, so you can see through. I'm making progress, but it's definitely slow. So I want to be pretty gentle because I definitely don't want to screw this thing up at this stage. It has been an absolute mission to make it, but I'm really hopeful that it's all going to be worth it in the end. But I have to say, using this little tiny chisel is quite satisfying. I've never used this one before, and I guess it's good for this sort of intricate work. But yeah, definitely a lot of work to make this piece, but that's where I get the joy. It's in the process. It's in the making of these little bespoke pieces. I could have bought a tap with a longer, I don't know what they'd be called. So I could have bought a longer tap, basically, but I didn't. I probably should have. However, I think it's going to look cool, and it's been pretty enjoyable. And yeah, no regrets. Well, unless I screw it up, then I will have many, many regrets. Okay, done. It's quite scruffy in there, but the taps fit in, so that's a win. And I've tried to chop this with the hacksaw without any success, so we're bringing out the big guns. Okay, looks pretty good. Let's see if it fits. Amazing. I'm so happy with this thing. Yeah, surprised it worked. Very pleased. Let's stick it in place. So that goes like that. That goes more or less like that. I'll probably glue it in, and then I've traced around the spot where I need to drill. Yeah, I think that's the limit. I feel like maybe I can finish this off using this smaller bit here, just going around the circle a little at a time. There's always something. I'm almost there. Come on. Ugh, maybe this isn't gonna work quite as I planned. Back to the drill. Almost. Oh wait, there we go. Come on. still a bit more, as you can maybe see. This has taken a while, but it's gonna be worth it. So, it's all looking a bit Swiss cheesy. I'm gonna clean it up with the chisels and then hopefully call this job mostly done. Okay guys, this is where I'm at. I was just about to linseed oil the taps and then sort of temporarily put them in place, but now my solar is beeping. It's been raining loads. And after what's already been a really long video, I'm sorry to disappoint with not actually sticking these things in, but I do have a few more things to do, and I can't really do it in the dark. I do have smaller lights that run off of my portable battery, but I don't have that hooked up to the actual house system. So when that system goes off, the lights go off, and it's too hard to work by a small light bulb and to film as well. So I'm happy with the work I've gotten done in this video, but unfortunately I wasn't able to finish the whole thing. However, I'm waiting for a delivery of some stuff before I can install the sink anyway, so hopefully I can get it all done at once and then also push on with the carpentry once I get my solar charged back up. Hopefully we'll have a sunny day soon. So, I'm getting wet under here. It's been a really fun video, a lot of interesting work for me, lots of first time things, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, please give the video a like. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, it helps the channel. And thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.